Thank you for inviting me. And although it is a talk in my own language and the diatopic variation that we have in the many varieties of languages present in the Italian territory, I think this is relevant to a Slavic-speaking audience, because I've always thought that the definite article in Italian is not very different from the no article that you find in Latin and still find in many Slavic languages. So I think I've always thought since my PhD thesis in 1992 that the definite article in Italian is nothing else than a free morphology of number and, let's say, noun class. So we call it gender, but of course it is also noun class. So this has been a leitmotif in my research, and this talk has been given in different forms since 2021. I was an invited speaker in Helsinki CIDSM, the various invited talks. I haven't written it yet. So any comment from any comment is very welcome. But also I hope to get comments from you who are probably much more expert than I am of a no definite article language. Okay, the logos you find here, one is the department, one is the Center of Studies for Multilingualism, which I'm a director of, and you are welcome to to follow the activities, and the Variopinta, which is an unfunded project for the moment, but stands for Variation and Optionality in Italo, Romance and Beyond. It has been a project partially funded by the previous Excellence Department funding that we received 7 years ago from the Ministry of the University. And here the idea is, if there is variation, is the variation significant for different nuances of meaning that are often found in many environments, or is it a free variation? And as you know, in many theories in linguistics, since economy is the general principle that science likes, optionality is a problem, because usually one form is more complex than the other, so it's more costly than the other. So there shouldn't be optionality for between possibilities that have a different weight in their complexity. But, you know, this, I think, is first an empirical issue and then a theoretical one. And so what is needed, I think, is to set the empirical framework to decide what kind of phenomenon we are dealing with. Okay, so I will now, from now on, call the definite article ART, written in capital, just to not call it definite, okay? But when I say art, is not the indefinite. It's only this form of an L. Usually it is an L with some morphology. Okay, so the conventional article in all languages, including Italian, is what is called in logic or in semantics as strong definite. Something like Mary saluted the president. I've used the feminine here just because president is often related to men, or to the masculine gender, even for a woman president. But that's just a political statement. So Mary saluted the president. If we are in a republic, or if we are in the center of multilingualism, there is a president. We know there is only one. So the definiteness means unicity and familiarity. So we know that there is a precedent, we know it is just one, and so we are familiar with this referent. Whether we are familiar with the specific referent or not, it doesn't really matter. The strong definiteness means this, familiarity and unicity, okay? Then there are other two types of definite articles that are found across languages which do not comply with this familiarity plus unicity interpretation. And they are often called in the literature short, weak definites. This is the second line. Or they are found with some specification, usually a genitive specification. And in this case, they're called long, weak definites plus genitive. I give you Italian examples in two. We will see in the next slide their English counterpart. I didn't space. So Maria legge il giornale, Mary reads the newspaper, is the same in English. It is definite, but it doesn't mean she reads the same object every day. I wanted to marry the son of a feminist. I'm not even, so since it is in the imperfective, I'm not even assuming that there is a referent for such a description. Nevertheless, it is good with a definite article, both in Italian and in English and in many other languages that have a definite article. Okay, so that's number 3. 1, 2, and 3 are common, as I just said, to very many languages, and English is one of them. Now, if we look at 4, this has been studied by seminal work by Subizarreta and Vergniaud when I was a student, 1990 something. They're called in current literature long weak definites with a relational noun. They usually imply an object which is a body part or some noun that has some, let's say, covered possessor. Okay, so like hand here, Gianna and Maria hanno alzato la mano, they raised their hands. As you see in English, the possessor must be overt, and the hands, since Gianni and Maria have 2 different sets, well, pairs of hands. What they raise actually is not a single hand. In English, you need to have a plural. The plural, by the way, is not a regular plural. It's just doesn't usually mean, even in English, Gianni and Maria raised their hands, that they raised both hands, but could be just their right hands, okay? In Italian and in many Romance languages, this is a definite article with a singular object, the hand, okay? And we don't care whether it is a left hand or a right hand, okay? So the doesn't even mean is one of the two. Then it is well known that Romance languages have a definite article, which is very non-conventional, to express kind reference. So if we say in English, cats have 4 legs, in English we do not have an article, we have a bare noun. In all Romance languages, from the very west to the very east, the article is obligatory. And this is true for the plural. Of course, this reminds us what happens for the singular in English, because the cat has 4 legs. So that's a good kind referential sentence for English. Then there is a very non-conventional article that has been discussed by Longobardi in 1994 with proper names. This is very unconventional because proper names are in general considered directly referential. So if I say Gianna or Maria, I refer to a specific individual that I have in mind. It's sort of more like a demonstrative, that referent that we know, and not this combined this compositional interpretation that we get with definite descriptions. Nevertheless, there are some languages, include also Germanic, but also some Romance languages that have a definite article for proper names that otherwise work like real proper names. So they are not compositional in their referential interpretation. And this is 6. This could be the Italian spoken in the north, right? The standard Italian spoken. And then there is a 7th type of art that I think has never been discussed in theoretical literature apart from very recently a paper of mine with Cardinaletti, and now from a project on partitivity, some people have started addressing this question. But usually this is what I think is the strongest evidence for my idea that the definite article in Italian doesn't mean definiteness. And this is a really weak indefinite reading. So a narrow scope reading, no referential, no specificity, no unicity, no familiarity. So out of the blue, if you ask me, what did you eat yesterday, without a context that makes tortellini relevant, for example, if I go to Luca's family, maybe tortellini may be relevant because tortellini is a typical dish of that region, okay? But even, let's say I'm going to Sicily, where nobody cooks tortellini, nobody makes them, okay? And it's I'm very surprised that they gave me this horrible tortellini that they find at the supermarket, which I would never eat because I'm almost as near as, or my origin is almost as near as Luca. They say, can you imagine? Abbiamo mangiato I tortellini. And in my Italian, it just means we ate tortellini, okay? That's the non-marked. Of course, if there are some familiar tortellini, we say we made tortellini first, etc., then it's ambiguous. But in the indefinite reading, it's a narrow scope interpretation. It's exactly like a bare noun. Okay. This is what I have told you, the English counterpart, okay? So the president is a strong definite in English. We have short, weak definites in English. Maria reads the newspaper every day. We have a long, weak definite with a genitive in English. The son of a feminist means a man who has the property of being son of feminists. The feminists may have even more than one son, so there is no unicity here, and the referent is indefinite because the genitive, which helps define the referent, is indefinite. 4 has obligatory possessive and plural if the relational nouns are more than one, so one for each person of the subject, of the conjoined subject. Reference to kind in English is 0, but as I said, it's obligatorily definite in Romance languages. Proper names are possible with definite articles in Romance languages, but the indefinite, the weak indefinite narrow scope interpretation of art is totally unknown to any other language I know, including all Romance languages. So the blue are Romance phenomena, the black are more general phenomena, the red is an Italian phenomenon. Okay. Okay, so what is this article in the literature? I mean, it's not this non-conventional use of article has been widely discussed in the literature. The red phenomenon, the indefinite, is either dismissed as one sub-case of previous, so what is called weak definites, or is totally ignored. But the blue ones are discussed in many places in the literature. And usually there are two schools. One school says, let's decompose the features of definiteness, and maybe in the non-conventional definiteness, there is only one of them, okay? Or another school, this is the case of, for example, Leonetti 2019, or Espinal and Cirino 2017 in two papers, Beissad 2013. They say, for example, the former ones, they say uniqueness is general, but it can be satisfied at the level of tokens, but also at the level of types. So definiteness is uniqueness, but it's ambiguous between being defined at the level of tokens or at the level of types in some languages, okay? While in other languages, it's only at the level of tokens. On the other hand, Donat-san says that the general umbrella for uniqueness is saliency or familiarity. Sorry, the general umbrella for definiteness is not uniqueness, but saliency or familiarity. So in weak definites, we have this saliency or familiarity. So the context somehow makes the element definite in some way, okay? So nobody wants to renounce to the idea that definiteness and that the definite article corresponds to a special semantic feature. So it's there for semantic reasons. There are other theories that are somehow parallel to this. Maybe they can be combined to this. Meaning that definiteness is different. So, for example, there are different definite morphemes, some of which are expletives. So there are some definite articles that are meaningful and some definite articles that are meaningless. So there are two types of definite articles. This is again, we have two schools. One school, which is the one taken by Vernio and Zubizarreta, 1992, for the long weak definites with the relational nouns, or Longobardi, 1994, when he discusses kind, reference, and the article with proper names. He says, in these cases, the article is there for grammatical reasons, okay? In the other cases, it's inserted for semantic reasons. Another version of this, which is alternative to this idea, is what is being taken by Chierchia and Zamparelli, Aguilar and Guevara and Schwartz, and Aguilar and Guevara in 2014, that that we have two definites. One is, let's say, the token, the referent to individuals, and the other one is kind definiteness. So this ambiguity splits, and the possibility of, or mandatoriness of the definition of kind, of the realization of kind reference with a definite article, it brings with it other types of uses of this morpheme. So the fact that in the languages kind reference is realized with a definite article should give me what? So for Chierchi and Zamparelli, they are treating the so-called partitive articles. So the article that combines with this sort of preposition to express a particular kind of indefiniteness. Okay? Aguilar and Guevara and Schwartz, at the moment, I don't remember what they are treating. But again, it's this idea that kind is special in Romance languages in being realized with the article. As you see, these four types or combined types of hypotheses have nothing to do with what I'm saying. I've been saying since 1992, namely that the articles just contribute for number features, gender features, bundle with gender, and possibly case if we consider definiteness and indefiniteness, especially in direct argument position, subject and object as being related to case. So we know since Belletti, since, much work also in Milner, for example, that indefiniteness is related to a genitive-like morphology. We have the clitic ne, which corresponds to ich, for example, for the plural genitive, and appears with quantifiers. We see that in many other languages that have case, Finnish on the one hand, Turkish on the other, definiteness or specificity as opposed to indefiniteness and or specificity may end up being realized with a different case morphology. Okay, so that's the general idea of mine. Since 1992, my thesis, 93, it's a volume from the thesis written in Italian. 2002 and 2015 are works that are accessible to people who do not speak Italian already. So this is the idea. I have a very minimal structure. There is, in my opinion, not assuming a lot of structure. There is a very simple structure. It's a single DP projection. In the head, we just have the case. So the features, the formal features, the syntactic features that are assigned from the outside of the nominal expression, and that's case, which relates to the grammatical position that the DP is taken, and the internal features, namely gender in the sense of noun class and number. Okay, this is D, and D may be overt or realized, and in some cases it is overt and realized as article. Okay, in my framework, the interpretation is done in the specifier of the DP. There you find demonstratives across languages, and there you find the zero operator that you must assume for the languages that don't have articles. And of course, the null operators can be definite or indefinite. Okay, so I would say that if what we have here, 59, it's taken from my volume 2015, if the other nice girls Dutch, le altre simpatiche ragazze olandesi, is interpreted as definite, is that because this zero competes with another zero, which is indefinite and would have no overt head, which carries gender and number, let's say in the Italian of the North. But in fact, in other contexts, also the indefinite zero could be combined with the bundle of features of gender and number. Okay, so Italian would be like Polish. We actually don't have an overt well, we actually, yes, don't have an overt definite article. We have an overt piece of morphology for gender number, and let's say direct case. Okay, so we see that lots of languages, if we look at walls, lots of languages have no article or no differentiation between definiteness and indefiniteness. Okay, so this is macro variation, and the fact that the zero definite or indefinite operator is recoverable from context, from grammatical position, and also in some cases from what it occurs with inside the nominal expression or outside from, let's say, sentence operators, is a dimension of macro variation. So, as I said, weak definites and long weak definites with a genitive complement are common in all Germanic languages and in the languages of Europe. Then there are the blue types, I've already discussed them, which are common to Romance languages. But then there is this weak indefinite interpretation of art, which is only present in Italo-Romance. Okay. And this is the variation that we find in Italo-Romance. If we have mass nouns like meat, so singular mass, we can have 3 ways in Italian. I ate meat, ho mangiato carne. I ate the meat, ho mangiato la carne, which could just mean I ate meat without definiteness on carne. And we can also say ho mangiato della carne with the so-called partitive article. The partitive article is apparently formed from a preposition D, so a genitive marker D, plus this morphology that, of course, cannot be interpreted as definite. I mean, even Zamparelli and Chierchia, who want to keep the definite meaning of article, have to have lots of extra operators that change definiteness into indefiniteness, and especially Zamparelli and Aguilar and Guevara later on, they relate this, the presence of a partitive article, from the presence of the kind referring article in Italian. Interestingly, the pronoun that resumes this indefinite interpretation are different. The zero or the zero, when the zero is left dislocated, as in E and F, the zero may display overt D. Overt D is the first part of the partitive article. Okay, so it's, let's say, the partitive article without the article, without the definite part. So I can say meat I don't eat, meaning talking about meat, I don't eat it. I can say carne non ne mangio or di carne non ne mangio. This shows that when we have zero or when we have D, which we may now take also following Spinale and Cirino, who give their independent analysis of this form, much more complicated than what you find here, as an alternation between an overt D, which is a minus definite determiner, and the non-overt minus definite determiner. Okay, and the two occur with a zero, in this case, in E and F, and this zero I would take as being the realization of a partitive case. Okay, let's say the genitive case that you find with mnogo in many Slavic languages. Now, I don't know if Polish has it, but for sure in Russian you can say mnogo and then a plural noun. or a singular mass noun in the genitive. Okay. But indefiniteness in Italian can also be realized as I said, with this definite article. And in this case, we would have an overt D, okay, an overt head with gender and number. And this overt D would again be interpreted as indefinite because it can co-occur with a null indefinite operator, determiner. Okay, this would be G, la carne, and the clitic that resumes it is the accusative clitic. So I take the overt article as being gender and number and accusative. Okay, while the zero is gender and number and partitive. The overt accusative article can also co-occur with the overt indefinite de operator, forming the so-called partitive article. And again, this combination, the overt de plus the overt definite article, because the definite article is accusative case, is resumed by an accusative clitic. So in particular, in Italian, this means certain types of meat I don't eat. Okay? So della carne non la mangio, dell'altra carne, some other types of meat, some other meat I can eat. For example, there are people who only eat white meat, we call it la carne bianca, so chicken and not beef. Okay, this whole long story, which I will not repeat because I don't want to bore you, is with plural. So crucially, only mass, singular, and count plural have this variation. Okay, not the singular count nouns. Singular count nouns must have an indefinite article if they are indefinite, or a definite article if they are a conventional definite. Okay. Interestingly, we can have a left dislocated singular count indefinite with bear or with D, okay, when it co-occurs with quantifier 1. In this case, you know, in A, I don't eat a biscuit would mean it. I don't eat a biscuit in Italian is ambiguous between I don't eat any biscuit, narrow scope, or there is a biscuit or a type of biscuit that I don't eat. Okay. But if I dislocate just biscuit, I cannot have the equivalent of a, so the real indefinite article in Italian. I cannot dislocate it if it is singular because we don't have bare nouns or D plus no article singular noun count nouns, but I can have the equivalent of the quantifier 1, so the cardinal 1, which would be again more similar of the construction that we find with mnogo plus the plural in Russian. Okay, so biscotto non ne, and this ne again is a partitive clitic, which has the same morphology as the genitive possessive clitic. Okay. Okay, so now let's look at this phenomenon from a pan-Romance perspective. How can we express indefiniteness in the other Romance languages? If we go from the very west, we see, and this is an old diachronic historical linguistics rule. The lateral languages are more conservative. They are more similar to Latin. So zero is more widespread in the lateral areas of Romance of the Romania. So we have with now on 9 is mass nouns, and 10 is plural nouns. We have obligatory 0 with mass nouns in Portuguese, Spanish, and Catalan. And we have a possible 0 in Italian and Romanian. So 0 with singular count nouns is very widespread. Italian and Romanian have variation. In Romania, we can have niște, which is a uninflected indefinite, which would be very interesting to be studied. Italian has the partitive article that we find in French, but when we speak national Italian, even regional Italian, I think, and maybe Luca may tell me, the option between the 0 and the partitive del actually is not a free variation. It has some content, some nuances of indefiniteness, but only in Italian we can have the article without the de, forming this non-conventional definite, okay? And this is true for plural count nouns. I will make the story short. It's exactly the same things. What is interesting is that in Ibero-Romance, so Portuguese, Spanish, and Catalan, we also, and in fact, also in Romanian, we have an equivalent of the plural of one, of a to be. So the plural of the indefinite articles that are very much studied, they are not exactly a plural indefinite article, but they are not plural cardinal quantifiers, for sure, okay? So the plural umas, unas, unes do not correspond to either the real singular definite article or the cardinal quantifiers, okay? None of them has the Italian definite article, which is the topic of my discussion here. So the aims and goals, not just of this talk, but of a general inquiry that I have, so I will probably not cover them all today, is first of all, provide the diagnostics for these very different types of non-conventional definiteness, to be compared with the conventional definiteness, and to be compared with this part of definiteness that we have inside the partitive article, and to be compared with the null article for indefiniteness. And the diagnostics are different in different languages, because different languages are slightly different. How can we use the diagnostics? Okay, this is another long story of mine. I called that protocol in 2011. I was invited in Cambridge for a short visiting fellowship to develop this. And I'll say in a moment, but you know, once you have found the diagnostics, in order to compare languages or to compare frameworks, you have to put the diagnostics, let's say, in a grid so that the grid interacts, okay? And once we, through the protocol, and in next slide will tell you exactly what it is. Once the protocol is done, the protocol will, on the one hand, help us find the data, systematic data, because what I often see in the literature is that certain analyses favor certain predictions. Some of these predictions are go through. Okay, so they are confirmed, and then the analysis says my analysis is good. But if you don't keep all the possibilities in sight, then some diagnostics are simply good also for the other type of indefiniteness. So they don't show exactly what they are meant to show. So once we know we have a systematic picture of the data, then we can evaluate the competing hypothesis, okay? And of course, I think my hypothesis is better, because otherwise I would not try to convince you to it. Now, 2 slides on what protocol is. I have applied it to very different syntactic environments with different co-authors. But I think you are a good audience for this. I think I've always, I was born a generativist. So in 1984, I went, in 1984, 86, I was a student at Berkeley, California. I got this exchange fellowship for different reasons. I chose to go to Berkeley and not to LA or to other universities in California. They were more generativist. But I would have never thought before getting there that generative grammar was hated. So for the whole year, I was hated by my colleagues, students, because I had studied Chomsky, and I was so I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but I thought this, like every war, and every war of religion or it's stupid, right? Science should be good. So what do linguists want to know? They want to know how language is in our mind, how language has developed in history, how language varies in geography. And every theory has some truth, because functionalism, all these, optimality, typology, traditional historical linguistics, whatever theory is good. And everybody thinks that the others are the enemy. And this is so unscientific, although it is so human, because I'm sure linguistics is not the only field in which science is hindered by this kind of way of behaving. So I think that a lot of effort is wasted in showing that my theory is better than yours, both within and outside all these theories. And also a lot of work in generative grammar, this was my special observation, is inaccessible to other languages, because it's too stupidly difficult, too self-referential, okay? So for this reason, I think that even pursuing a very theoretical approach in some circles, generativists should be more accessible. So I think that a lot of the diagnostics that I'm using, I could have not thought of if I was not a generativist, if I had not this, you see, this sort of tree that many people think that are, make no sense. But, this kind of tree made me make some hypotheses. But this hypothesis then made me find some interesting data that had been noted very superficially only by some very good, very old Italian dialectologists who were not Italian, by the way. So Rolfs, for example. Okay. So what I say in general is we need a system that is shared. Okay. So diagnostics are shared. Simple semantic analyses are shared that apply systematically in the same way with the same tool in the same situations, in different situations, but comparable. So different languages, different dialects. And we should avoid the side effects that may arise in the process of data collection. So, for example, there are side effects like asking somebody to translate into their dialect. That's a contact that is problematic, and that is possible to be presented not only to other linguists of other environments, but also to other scientists in other applied scientists. And now in the last 15 minutes, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so this is the collection of results done in the years, I think 1921 or maybe 1820 of dialectal search in different points. They were chosen simply because I had students in my class who spoke those dialects. So we submit, among whom Luca, we submitted a questionnaire that was checking certain types of indefiniteness. Now let's take the really weak indefinite part and see whether the null article or the overt definite article to express indefiniteness, such as I am a teetotal, I don't drink alcoholics, I am a vegetarian, I don't eat meat. So really indefinite interpretation, both in the present and in the past. So also yesterday we didn't eat meat, we only had vegetables. Okay, so and we see that even if Italian dialects are similar to one another, there is again this line, this isogloss of zero that is external. And there is an isogloss, an internal isogloss of the development of the definite article with indefinite meaning, which is stronger in the center. So near Rome, for example, Ancona, and it has already spread to north and south. Okay. The partitive article is only present in some dialects, and in parentheses, I represent the fact that it has a special meaning. So it does not have the meaning that is the core, that is core indefiniteness mean. So this is a protocol for core indefinites in object position. Okay, now I don't have time to convince you that those indefinites are not weak definites. Okay, so those indefinite interpretation of the definite article are not weak. I will go very quickly. For kind reading in object position has been individuated by Anscombre for French and Laca for Spanish. So verbs of like, of love, can have an object that is kind referential. So if I say monkeys, I'm sorry, I did not gloss this. Monkeys love bananas. Okay, in English I have 0, 0. In French, I have obligatory article and obligatorily a definite article in French in the object and in the subject, because we know that the subject is kind, but also the object is kind. So the kind monkey loves the kind bananas. Okay? Here we have a definite article. This is a kind referring, and French helps us. So French gives us a diagnostics. If we have the definite article, it is only a kind referring object. If we have an indefinite object, even if it is a generic sentence, we cannot have a definite article. We must have the partitive article. So B means monkeys, the kind monkeys, eat, generically eat, bananas. Okay? We must have an indefinite overt partitive article. Okay? Spanish gives us the same diagnostics, but in the object position, the indefiniteness is a 0. So, los monos, monkeys, love los plátanos, bananas, but monkeys, los monos, eat bananas without any unos or los or anything. And what is interesting is that in Italian, the B sentences usually have the article. So if we compare the B sentences of Italian with Spanish B and French B, we see that the definite article in Italian corresponds to the partitive article in French and to the 0 determiner in Spanish. Okay? And that's not kind, because the B sentence, because you cannot eat a kind. Okay? So the indefinite in the generic context is not a weak definite, and it's not a kind reference, but it is a real indefinite. Okay, then I have a list of these properties that I can now read, and then I'll give the paper, I'll give the presentation if you want to share it with in your channel. So usually weak definites are unable to take away scope, tend to occur in object or prepositional object position, tend but do not have to, display lexical restrictions on both the verb and the preposition and the n with which you construct the sort of fixed expression. Nominal modifiers are very limited. The event interpretation is stereotypically enriched. It can have slope interpretation, and the article in some contexts may be optional in some languages with lots of variation across languages. And finally, Romance languages are similar in weak definiteness to one another and to English. And now very briefly, you see, if you're reading the newspaper, and what's interesting is that weak definites often have a singular count noun in the object position. This is not the case with the weak indefinites that I was talking about. Okay. So this is very quick. Read the newspaper, go to the hospital, has an unconventional article in English, and it's the same in all languages. Listen to the radio, okay? Look at yourself in the mirror. Okay, this, of course, this is also present in Italian, okay? But if we see what we have in Italian, okay, we see that you can say, I didn't eat the biscuits, to mean I didn't eat any biscuits with no wide scope. And this is plural, it does not have an enriched meaning. It just means eat biscuits. While, for example, the enriched meaning, I think, is the yeah. So if you go to the hospital, okay, first of all, the hospital again is singular. If you go to the hospital, you're going to get medicated, to get medical treatment in the weak definite interpretation. Of course, this is always ambiguous. For example, if you come to Venice, you can go to the hospital and admire the frescoes that are in the old part of the hospital. Okay, but in that case, the hospital is referential. Okay, if you wash the dishes, in this case, you have a plural count noun. Usually, the stereotypically enriched interpretation is that you wash everything. You wash the pans, the cutlery, you wash the glasses, okay? While if you use this not as a non-conventional weak definite, but as a real weak indefinite, you do not have this enriched interpretation. And there is no restriction on the kind of object and on the kind of verb that you can have. This is typical of real indefinites, not of definites. So if you look at C, you can say, I don't buy books, I don't buy journals, I don't buy comics, I don't buy biscuits, I don't buy sugar, okay? I don't sell, I don't give for free all these things, okay? It can only work with mass nouns and plural count nouns, unlike weak definites, and has no restriction that we usually find to weak definites. Okay, so I'll just give you the protocol for this. These are the properties of definites in the 7 types of definites. So the uniqueness and familiarity is typical of the strong. The narrow scope is typical of many of these definites, not of the strong, but of the short weak, of the long weak definite with the genitive, the long weak definite with the relative noun, raise their hand. It's not typical of the kind interpretation, it's not typical of proper names, but it is typical of the indefinite. You see, in this, for example, in the narrow scope, you have a similarity between what I call the weak indefinite art, but also the zero, and some types of D plus article in some Italian dialects. They are similar to short weak definites, but that's just a chance. Because, for example, the lexical restriction, there are no lexical restrictions on this side of the protocol, and there is the lexical restriction on short weak definites. No descriptive modifiers are possible on weak definites. They are possible with zero and with indefinite, and so forth. Okay, so if you see the weak indefinite art is more similar to the zero than to the weak definite. Okay, and then the comparison across languages, Romance on the one hand, Germanic on the other hand, again, makes these different types of conventional and non-conventional uses of the definite article quite different. And I think I can stop here. Yeah, no, very briefly commenting. So if we try to reanalyze or attribute the indefinite interpretation of this definite article from the definite interpretation by adding operators, I don't think we do a good service to theory, because on the one hand, we would we would suppose, so for example, Chieti and Zamparelli would predict that it is the kind reading of the definite article, but they don't tell us why this is only possible in Italian and not in Spanish, because in Spanish there is also a kind reading. Donazan, for example, the familiarity, we don't know why this difference between uniqueness and familiarity doesn't give the same results all over the Germanic and Romance languages. The expletive articles that are assumed by Longobardi, I think, are just ad hoc theoretical means, because in fact, Longobardi has to have two different expletive articles, one for kind and one for proper names, because they have two different functions in grammar. So saying that something sometimes means and sometimes doesn't, I think weakens the semantic unification of that element instead of reinforcing it. And then again, there is a lot of literature that shows that there is nothing partitive in the partitive article, because it's just indefinite, while a real partitive construction has two individuals. One is the indefinite individual, and the other one is the superset, one of the books or something. And on the other hand, there is nothing definite in the partitive article. So I think having a theory that says this morpheme is just gender, number, and case features, namely the syntactic features inside the nominal expression, which may have a concord with semantic features. So, for example, gender with human reference have some semantic interpretation, but not because the gender features have a semantic interpretation. It's because there is this concord. If I have a female referent, I must have the gender, the morphological gender in the article. And case, again, I think there is a lot to learn from languages which don't have article but have case, how case interacts to give definiteness or indefiniteness interpretation. And I think I will stop here. Okay. So thank you so much.